Hey there, Food Junkies listeners. Before we dive in, we've got something really special for you, and it's time sensitive. How does a free live stream ticket to the International Food Addiction Comorbidities Conference sound? That's a $140 value, and we're giving away 20 of them. Here's the deal. For every $25 US donation you make, your name goes into the draw. $50, that's 2 entries. $100, that's 4 chances to win. The conference happens September 4th and 5th, 2025, live from London. But with this live stream ticket, you'll get front row access to 17 expert speakers, 2 groundbreaking panel discussions, and the latest research and recovery insights from global leaders in the field. But hurry, the draw is happening September 1st. This giveaway is hosted by Food Addiction Solutions and Sweet Sobriety. And here's the best part. Your donation doesn't just get you in the draw, it helps us fund the science, the community, and the advocacy that's changing lives. So check the show notes for the link. Don't forget to include your name and email so we can reach out to you if you win. Let's build a healthier future together. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. Here, we aim to bring you the experience, strength, and hope of professionals working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. Our mission is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a recognized disorder. Here, we discuss all things recovery, exploring the many pathways people take towards abstinence in order to achieve a health-forward lifestyle. We hope to inspire you to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, and share your journey with others, and hopefully the message will spread. Hey, Food Junkies listeners, Clarissa here. Today's episode is more than just a conversation. It's a celebration of how science, lived experience, and community wisdom can come together to create real hope and change. We started the Food Junkies podcast to inspire exactly this. We're honored to welcome back DrClaire Wilcox, a trailblazer in the field of food addiction. Claire is an addiction psychiatrist, a former internist, and associate professor of translational neuroscience at the Mind Research Network. She's worked in everything from eating disorder treatment centers to general psychiatry and is on the front lines of research, clinical care, and advocacy. Her academic textbook, Food Addiction, Obesity, and Disorders of Overeating, has helped shape the professional dialogue. But today, we're talking about her newest book, Rewire Your Food-Addicted Brain, Fight Cravings and Break Free from a High-Sugar, Ultra-Processed Diet, a compassionate, research-informed, and accessible guide for individuals navigating food addiction. And the wild part? This book was directly inspired by our podcast. In today's episode, we explore the ideas that help shape the book and that will help shape the future of how we understand food addiction. Here's what you'll learn. Why food addiction isn't a character flaw, it's neurobiology. Claire walks us through the brain science of cravings, impulse control, and stress reactivity, showing how ultra-processed foods hijack the same neural pathways as substances like nicotine and alcohol. We talk about the difference between binge eating and food addiction and why that distinction matters, how recovery begins in the brain, why relapse isn't failure, it's information. We talk about food plans that flex. One of the most empowering parts of Claire's book is her 3-stage food plan model designed to meet people where they fall on the spectrum, from mild to severe food addiction. Whether you're just beginning or you've quote unquote, tried everything, there's a pathway that honors both your biology and your autonomy. We also talk about the power of value-based recovery. Instead of rigid weight loss goals, Claire encourages readers to anchor their recovery in values like freedom, peace, and presence. And yes, weight loss can happen, but it's no longer the measuring stick of your worth or success. We also talk about the cultural and economic realities in recovery and the importance of making recovery accessible. Finally, we finish with compassion over perfection. We return to our core truth. Recovery is messy, nonlinear, and deeply human. Whether you're quote unquote one of those low bottom or mildly struggling, or somewhere in between, you deserve compassionate care, informed support, and tools that actually work. Whether you're just beginning to question your relationship with food or you're years into recovery, this episode is a permission slip to drop the shame, trust your body, and find your own path forward. Dr. Wilcox's book, Rewire Your Food-Addicted Brain, is available everywhere August 1st and includes free tools and neuroscience-backed strategies, while also including some flexible food plans designed to help you spiral up, one hopeful step at a time. So get ready to feel seen, validated, and inspired. Let's dive in. So this is a very special episode that we are so excited to bring you because we have DrClaire Wilcox on the show, and she has written a book somewhat based on the Food Junkies podcast. So welcome, Claire.
Hey guys, it's so exciting to be here. Thanks for having me again.
So great to see you. So we really want to know what inspired you to write this book because, there's so many, well, there's not maybe so many, but there's a few books out there on food addiction already. What did you think was missing and how does this book, fill that gap for readers and clinicians and anyone in recovery?
I mean, you guys inspired me to write this book. Oh my God. I just am so grateful for the Food Junkies podcast. I was kind of in a little struggling with food for a little bit. And I started listening to your podcast back in 2021-ish. No, it must have been 2020. And just was as a person who had written a textbook and had all this data in my head, but was still struggling, I started listening to this podcast. I was like, oh my God, A, I'm validated. And B, there is so much good information here. You guys asked all these great questions. You interview all these people that are filled with incredible amounts of knowledge and based in science. And I just was feeling like your guests and you guys were speaking my language in a way that I'd never heard anybody else speak. So it's something that, I've been wanting to write a book about food addiction for the lay public ever since I wrote the textbook. And it was listening to this, I just thought, oh my God, there's a message here that was kind of missing just by having combed through all the research and thought about things from a neurobiology perspective that I felt like that needed to be kind of integrated into something that could be consumed quickly. I mean, the podcast is full of good stuff, but it's a lot of hours. So it's, thinking of a way to kind of make it into a book that had clear, tips for people just was absolutely the primary motivation. So thank you guys.
Definitely. I can understand how a book might maybe make buckets of the different topics or themes that have been covered over the last few seasons of Food Junkies and how that might make it a little bit easier to find if it's oh, it's all, polyvagal or this, that, or the other thing, right? There are whole chapters on it where if you're listening to the podcast, you need to go scroll through. I think we're about to release episode 238 this week or something along those lines. So you're right, Claire, that is a lot of hours to go listen to. Please do go listen to it though, right? Listen to it.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
I love the podcast for the reason that it almost feels like a living book or a living document, sort of in a way, right? Where books, they end, but this just kind of continues. But I love that. I love the idea and how you think about this kind of thing. And in your book, you do dive into topics like neurobiology of things like the overeating and decision making. And you have chapters that are, titled addiction as a disorder of decision making and your stress response system, and how you really seem to shift that conversation away from, shame and blame and stigma and really more toward understanding. And so I was wondering if you could talk to us about how, that reframe can really help us when we start thinking, oh, this is a lack of willpower. This is a me issue. I've done this. I've made these decisions. So of course I deserve what's happening to me.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that is something that having quit drinking and done AA was very, and smoking too, I was like, okay, this is a biological, like I am genetically predisposed to being addicted and I have biology is driving this behavior, right? So that was pretty easy to like accept when I did a lot of research and went to AA meetings and heard about the disease of addiction. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, this is not me. This is my addiction. And it's the substance. Like, it's a substance plus my genetics plus my environment, and got to make changes in order to get well. So for me, that was easy to accept. Whereas when it came to food, I feel like the prevailing message for me, what I heard was, there's something wrong with you. Like, why aren't you eating like a normal person? Like, why can't you just have one cookie? Like, what is wrong with you? You must have an eating disorder. What is wrong with you that you can't? And not that eating disorder isn't a biological thing too. Like, if it's just a pure eating disorder, it's also very biological in it. But I think the prevailing message, like societal message, is that something rooted in your your soul, right? And so for me, I felt like I had to write a stupid textbook to convince myself that it was actually the biology of the food, and the genetics, just like, and it wasn't happening it was basically that my brain is biologically oriented towards overeating, but the world wasn't telling me that, right? Like, and that it was the food itself, the chemical itself, that was triggering a cascade of neurobiological events, just like with smoking, just like with alcohol, that was causing me to eat in a way that was really like awful. You know what I mean? And so, and that was leading to the perpetuation of the craving. So like, as I conceptualized writing the book, I was like, well, that's what the message that I feel like kind of feels like at a societal level is missing. Like, it's just missing still, and it's getting better, but it's just missing. I mean, I still think people think of like food addiction and they're like, oh, I'm addicted. Like, there's still something wrong with me. But no, it's just that like you have, since the age of 2, been given lots of cookies, and your brain has wired to like be attracted to cookies, buy the cookies. And so, just like any other substance. So for me, it was just like it's really key message for my own reduction in shame and blame. And one that I felt like, I don't know, I just feel like it's the same as alcohol and cigarettes,
But I like the way that you broke it down, Claire, like the way that you described the neurobiology of it. I could really see it, how it's like, it literally is no different than like a peanut allergy. The way you describe the neurobiology, we're like, okay, there's this combination of genetics and predisposition and the substances being ingested and like your own individual system and how it reacted and responded, not only to the substances, but it's almost like PTSD, right? We don't fully know why some people develop PTSD and why some people don't, but we know there are many factors that go into it. And a lot of it boils down to our individual systems and how we process that, right? Like how our brain structures process it, how our nervous systems process it. And so I could just really, as you were describing that, I could really like kind of equate those two things of like, oh yeah, it totally isn't my fault. Like, this is something that I was already predisposed to. I happen to be exposed to it under like these circumstances that then this is what developed. And so it's not a moral issue. It's not my fault. It's just my job to take care of it.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, one of the kind of examples that are coming to mind as you're talking is just, I mean, there's so many examples of neurobiological predispositions that lead people to become addicted. But one that comes to mind is just like, if somebody eats, one person eats ultra processed food and the brain doesn't really respond. And so the conditioning doesn't happen. They don't learn over time that, that to keep eating this food. And because of that, they, don't end up having any issues, and they can eat ultra processed. They can eat, cornflakes every day for breakfast, and it's no big deal. And then other people, just for whatever reason, have that reactivity in the brain that sets them up to develop learning. And this is chapter, 3 or something like that. But anyway, that one of the sort of 3 pillars of an addiction that sets them up to learn. And then it just kind of feeds on and on, such that whenever they're exposed to a cue associated with that particular food, they, it's just like their brains are wired to go for it.
Yeah, which makes so much sense when looked at even through the substance use disorder lens, when people talk about, are you somebody who could potentially become addicted to alcohol? Well, if the first time you drink, you're like, ooh, this is the magic elixir of life and is so rewarding, then yeah, going to, versus some people who drink and they're like, oh, this doesn't make me feel good and I don't like this. This actually me, I don't like it at all, then they are going to be less vulnerable to go back and use that substance again. And I think the other piece of it is we know the earlier you start using a substance, the higher the likelihood is that it will create a substance use disorder. And a lot of this ultra processed foods, we are starting at such a young age so that we are so much more vulnerable. And it's almost always given to us in the form of reward, which makes so many of us a little like, we start on the spectrum so early, I think, for a lot of people. But I think what I love about your book too is really in chapter 6, here you kind of lay out the neurobiology, you put these other pieces in place. And then in chapter 6, you really explore diagnosis and assessment, which I think is an area where people are like, oh, this is a little bit confusing. And there's controversy, like, is food addiction actually a clinical entity? So how do you help readers navigate that kind of diagnostic gray area? Do you think it's important for people to, do the MY fast, get an idea of where they fall on the spectrum? Is it something that you found like helpful? Is it something, that sometimes, you hear people who are like, oh, well, our label's helpful. Is a diagnosis helpful? I mean, for me, it was, wow, now I can have compassion for myself because this is a real thing. When I'm doing the MY fast with clients in a session, they're like, oh, like now it makes sense. I feel like I fit. I feel like I belong. So I just wondered if you could a little bit more about that chapter.
Yeah. So there's so much. I mean, I think one, there's so many things I want, like directions I feel like I kind of want to go in. But one thing is that, like, when you're looking at what I tell people that, this book is coming out, they're like, food addiction, I need to lose weight. And that's great. I'm going to buy this book. And I'm always like, wait, it's not a weight loss book. Like, it's not at all a weight loss book, right? So what is food addiction? It's not obesity. It's not the same as obesity, and it's not the same as people wanting to lose weight or take off a few pounds. That is not what food addiction is, right? Like, food addiction is a syndrome that is defined by what the other, and I would say food addiction because it isn't official yet, right? Like, it's not a DSM diagnosis. I say it I use that term. It may change in the future. Like, it may be ultra-processed food addiction, it may be high sugar ultra-processed food. We don't really know what the official term is. So, but yeah, like, people with this conceptual model of food addiction have essentially the same set of criteria around food that somebody with a nicotine addiction or an alcohol addiction or a cocaine addiction have around their substance abuse. So it's really based on whether or not there's, withdrawal and tolerance. So people use cookies a lot and then stop the cookies and they go into withdrawal and they feel yucky and cravey and unpleasant and irritable. It's about whether or not there's lots of negative consequences associated with use. It's, about obsessing and sort of, it's about, sort of losing out on your enjoyment in life due to overuse of substances. So, all the DSM criteria is sort of where what food addiction is. And so yes, I think the YFS is really, really helpful. And so we did, include the MYFS in the book. And so, yes, I mean, I think that's really key because it's not just like anybody that walks in the door that wants to lose a few pounds has food addiction, right? And it's not just anybody who walks in the door. The other thing that people conflate with food addiction is binge eating disorder and bulimia, and not everybody with binge eating disorder has food addiction and vice versa, right? Like, just to kind of like spin backwards a little bit, people with binge eating disorder have the conceptual model of binge eating disorder is that it comes from restriction, so that people starve themselves, that get hungry, and then over binge because of this restriction happening. And in their heads, I need to lose weight. And then bam, a binge happens. Whereas food addiction, although it can be fueled by that kind of thing, is not. The conceptual model is more that it's from the substances, from the food substances themselves. So the MYFS is really useful. The MYFS isn't perfect, and there's a lot in the field that needs to be kind of clarified, worked on, research. But, the article that David Wiss and Tim Brewerton published in 2021 or whatever, to isolate that, to define, basically, so the problem is that a lot of people with pure eating disorders, when they're in a starvation mode or in a restriction mode, are going to look like they have a food addiction. And so this article that Wiss and Brewerton wrote really helps to clarify how to make sure that it's not a false positive, or that the person doesn't have it could be that they have an underlying eating disorder rather than a food addiction. So that's all kind of talked about in chapter 6. And I think it's really important for food addiction professionals and for eating disorder professionals to be both to be aware of the flip side, the other kind of possible confounder when they're helping their patients out. Because if you have somebody with a food addiction who is provided with, a kind of typical eating disorders treatment plan, the all foods in moderation approach, which encourages, people to learn to eat ultra processed foods under control, they end up not doing well. And vice versa, if somebody is getting food addiction treatment and is told you have to eat this exact food plan without some personalization, then people can kind of spin out and develop binging as a result. So yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Food Junkies listeners. We're just going to take a quick break here to share with you something our team thinks could help benefit your recovery with food, body, or self. Thank you again for listening.
Hey there, Food Junkies listeners. Have you grabbed your ticket yet for the International Food Addiction and Comorbidities Conference 2025? It's happening September 4th and 5th in London, England at the iconic Royal College of General Practitioners. This is the global gathering for professionals passionate about tackling food addiction and its related conditions like type 2 diabetes, mental health disorders, cardiovascular disease, and more. Come learn from world-renowned experts like Dr. Georgia E., Dr. Nicola Bina, Dr. Nasha Winters, Dr. Erica Lafata, Dr. David Wiss, Dr. Kim Dennis, Professor Adrian Sotomoda, Karen Thompson, Dr. Ignacio Caranta, and Dr. Trocalasian, plus insights from UNICEF's Mauro Brero on transforming food environments for kids. Earn up to 13 continuing professional development hours, enjoy a nourishing midday meal all included in your ticket, and connect with clinicians, researchers, and change makers from around the world. Early bird tickets, 1-day, 2-day, and live stream tickets are on sale now, but only for a limited time. Head to the show notes and secure your spot at IFAC 2025. Let's move this conversation and this movement forward.
Now back to the show. If you have enjoyed this episode, please let us know. We love to hear from you. Kindly leave us a review on whatever platform you listen to our podcast on. We love getting feedback from our listeners.
I remember when we interviewed you about the textbook, right? And we talked about there are different phenotypes that really show up. And that just means there are kind of for anybody who doesn't understand the word phenotype, I'm going to use a food pun. It's different flavors of it's different variations of how this disorder can show up. And just that reminder of it's on the spectrum. And Clara, as you were just talking about that and why it's so important, because Clarissa and I actually specifically work at the intersection of those two things. And so we often have clients who have both going on, right? And David Wiss was actually just had some research published that shows that in some cases, the eating disorder developed as a compensatory behavior for food addiction, not in everybody, right? But that there was this subset of people where that was how they tried to manage the addiction piece, that piece where their brain was just lighting up and they couldn't stop. And so then here comes the restriction, or here comes the bulimia, right? But yeah, and I think that's really interesting to think about, is that when we come at it, from our own biased perspective, if we're no, this is the thing that I'm the expert in, everything looks like a nail and I've got the hammer,
Yeah.
Right. I've got the answer. And we're potentially, harming people. We're potentially leaving people out. Kim Dennis and and Tim Brewerton. I don't know if David was, Kim Dennis and Tim Brewerton for sure. I don't know if David Wiss was involved in this one, but Kim has a clinic, SunCloud Health, for anybody listening, SunCloud Health out of Chicago. Yeah, it's amazing. Clarissa and I got to spend a week there a few years ago, auditing groups and treatment and all of that. It is amazing. And they treat food addiction and eating disorders and substance use disorder and mental health stuff all under one roof. And we're watching people eat different things. They're in the same milieu, right? So they're in the same environment. And we've got people with restriction who are learning to eat foods that they're fearful of because there's like the fear of gaining weight, or, there's some sort of emotional reaction or response going on, and we, fear of the food, whatever it might be. And then we've got the people who are, in the food addiction program, and they're not eating the same muffin, and they have to like coexist. And I'm like, oh my God, isn't that how it happens in a family, in a house, or in relationship to other people who don't have the same? And so I really love that. And I think about the paper that they just put out too, that not all foods fit. And they specifically were talking about eating disorder and how we can start treating it that way. So I just really appreciate being able to highlight all of that with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing I realized as I was reading this book, and by the way, I just want to keep circling back to you guys and also Clarissa, was so helpful in writing this book, not only because she provided a bunch of information from your guys' what you use, worksheets, they're all in the back, but also because she made it okay to bring in harm reduction. She made it okay to not have to come out the gate with some sort of food plan. This is what you should. I mean, I feel and maybe you're channeling all the things you've learned in being interviewers, or maybe you're just brilliant. I don't know what, but I feel you guys have been, sort of generators of a lot of the sort of philosophy of the book. And I just want to sort of name that. But one of the things that, I feel I was more than coming out with any of my own ideas, I was just trying to channel you guys and the Food Junkies podcast into this book. So I just want to say that 100 times, and whether or not it succeeded, I don't know, but thank you guys for making it possible, being permissive to be permissive, I think, or permitting me to suggest permissive approaches. But anyway, one thing that really struck me is just how much overlap there is in, as you're talking about SunCloud Health, in how we treat eating disorders, addictions, and, specifically food addictions. The treatment approaches are all the same. I mean, there's really only one tiny, tiny difference. I mean, in how we treat eating disorders versus how we treat food addiction. And that is that in food addiction, we encourage kind of removal / cutting back / sort of moving away from certain triggering foods. Whereas in eating disorders treatment, there's an encouragement to include, all foods. That's it. That's the only difference. The rest of it's all exactly the same. We want to treat comorbid mental health conditions. We want to be supportive. We want to build community. We want to be validating. We want to be, it's just all the same stuff. So it doesn't seem like rocket science, although it is rocket science because people aren't doing it all over the place. But for a program like SunCloud Health to be working, you know what I mean? And by the way, I just want to say this too, chapter something, but it's in the online, it's free. We have 2 free online chapters. Lots of free tools. They're going to come out August 1st. And one of the chapters is basically about treating comorbid eating disorders and addictions. And I cite Kim's, wisdom throughout, or Dr. Dennis's wisdom, and then also Dr. Brewerton and Dr. Wiss and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a really good, or David Wiss. I don't think is he a Dr. Wiss or is he a David Wiss?
Yeah, PhD doctor. Yeah.
Oh, he's a doctor. Okay, yeah, that's right. He has a PhD. Yeah, he totally does have a PhD. So anyway, I just think that, and I talk about SunCloud Health and those online chapters too. So they're free. You don't need to buy the book. You can go and read about that stuff via the New Harbinger Publications website. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's so important because that was, I think, one of your goals was to make this book, or our goals, to make this book accessible to people. And, when you were sitting there talking, I was like, yeah, what really was so true for us, I think Molly and I both came in with an idea about how to treat food addiction, quote unquote. but we both came with a history of working in the substance use disorder field. And the longer we were immersed, and like I really say, it's like all of the clients that let us support them in this journey that taught us how to be the best clinicians for what they needed. So we had to like drop a lot of ideas about what we were being taught that we needed to was the best way to work with the individuals that were showing up. And we learned that this is new field and maybe there isn't a best way yet. And like to show up curiously and compassionately and kind of, see what works best with the hundreds of clients we've been blessed to work with. And coming from that substance use disorder field, harm reduction was a huge missing piece in the ultra processed food addiction field and still controversial. So that we do sometimes get a lot of pushback, but I think what I love about your book and what I want to just also talk a little bit more is like what we continually see in the food addiction field is like, I work with, and I'm doing quote unquote here, low bottom food addict, the one that is, I just want to make sure they're ready. They've hit rock bottom. What I'm wondering is if I'm somebody, maybe now I've bought this book and I'm doing the MY fast, maybe I'm scoring moderate on the food addiction scale, or even maybe mild. Is this book still going to be a book for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you don't have food addiction, it might be useful for people, right? Like not only because you have people in your family, but also just because like who of us doesn't have annoying cravings for cake that we're trying to, like it's very rare. Like just because it's such a pervasive, like these foods are so pervasive, they're everywhere. And all of us at some level or other sort of get frustrated with ourselves about the ways that our brains take us places we don't necessarily want to go. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I think definitely. And one of the things that I love about the Chapter 8 food plan section, which I worked on with Clarissa and Amy Reichelt, was the sort of 3 stages of recovery. So there's really the most permissive food plan, and that's kind of for the low bottom or mild scoring people. Possibly, like we don't really know for sure if that's the food plan that's going to match for the person with a mild food addiction. We just are guessing. And then the least permissive food plan is sort of for somebody who is unable to do the least permissive without kind of continuing to go back to binge eating or continuing to get like derailed by obsessions and cravings. And so, what the hope is that people can use this book to find their way to kind of the most permissive food plan that also allows them to be craving free and live a full life and not to sort of prescribe a one size fits all food plan to everybody because we're all different. I mean, gosh, one thing I think about in the book that wasn't covered that just seems so important is like cultural differences, like affordability. I mean, eating a really pure food addiction food plan is it's more expensive, right? Like, so how do you do a real kind of more extreme pure food addiction food plan without like having to, make $300,000 a year? I don't know, it's very expensive. So I'm not saying that to demoralize anybody, but it is like, it's just harder. It's more expensive to get fresh vegetables and good protein and things like that. It's harder. And so I think that a book like we all have different cultures, we all have different environments, we all have different work schedules, we all have different kind of barriers to try to kind of work through and overcome. So yeah, that was one thing I really liked about the book is that it's got a real range of options. And it could be that somewhere down the road, the research is going to show that a very rigid prescribed food plan is the way to get people well. I mean, I don't know, but we don't know that for sure. And so why force people to stuff when it's not, it's not known. So, and I can say for myself that I have a pretty permissive food plan. I mean, I don't eat sugar, but I still eat flour carefully. And as long as I don't mess around too much with that. And yeah, I feel pretty good. Like, and I'm not completely 100% craving free. I don't always eat perfectly every day. For sure. But boy, oh boy, the difference between now and then is extreme. I feel pretty happy. I have a good life.
Yeah. It really sounds like by having these kind of like different options for food plans. Like, hey, if you're maybe more on the mild end here, if you're more moderate, maybe something like this. And if you're, and again, folks, these are just like, they're just structure, like, what do we want to say? Like, examples. They're just examples of a way that you can eat. And the thing that I heard in that too, is when we're thinking about, like Clarissa earlier, you had asked, you're like, okay, but what if like somebody's working on their stuff and they're like putting these foods away and they're, maybe doing some distress intolerance and some emotional eating management, whatever is going on. Again, because it's a spectrum, when we show back up and we do these screens again, our scores can actually change, right? There can be improvement. And so I love that then that kind of offers, so like maybe I come in and I score really high and the recommendation in the book is like, oh, start with this food plan, but maybe I'm on this food plan for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a year, whatever. And I screen myself again and it's like, oh, maybe now it's mild or moderate. Oh, look, then maybe with support. And if it feels right for me, I could look at maybe expanding. I don't see it really as being permissive. I see it as like expanding. And this is just my language, the way that I talk to clients, right? Like I think about expanding it because I think about windows of tolerance all the time, right? Whether it be emotional, behavioral, food wise, whatever it might be. And for me as a mental health professional, I'm always looking for flexibility and thinking and how big can we expand that window of tolerance? And so like if we have to start out really structured first, like some very clear, firm boundaries. And then as we get stability and we have our brains start to repair, other systems start to repair, right? We might have room for those other things. And then that really got me thinking about how we were just talking about like those histories of eating disorders and how there's a lot of crossover and, whatever we see all the different phenotypes and all the spectrums within those phenotypes. How could some of these tools, maybe it's not just the food plans, but maybe it's also other tools, that you're offering in the book, like, how do you see those tools helping people find their path to recovery, especially if they've struggled with some of these, not only disorders, but maybe even shame given to them or being told there's only one way? Because personally, my inner rebel, as soon as you said that, like, I was like, oh, this is a hill somebody is going to die on, and it might be me. Let's go. Right. Like my inner fighter was immediately like, Claire, and I know that's not what you mean by it, Claire, but like I start thinking about myself and I'm going, yep, nope, that would never work for me. And I know I can't be the only one because I'm just not that important or special. So yeah, talk to us about like how you imagine these tools really could help somebody who maybe has really rigid beliefs around food or eating behaviors or whatever, and how this might help them expand that ability to be more flexible.
Yeah. God, I mean, I think one of the things in chapter 7 is about setting recovery goals that are like about, instead of saying, I want to be 110 pounds or whatever craziness, we say to ourselves when we're in a struggling mode, something like, what is my goal? Like, just want to be happy, right? Like, I just want to like wake up and be happy and live a happy, peaceful, good life. Like that's honestly like all I've really ever wanted. And now I'm kind of in that mode. And so, yeah, why did I get, I think I got derailed from your question there, but I just feel like that if we set a goal that's about something, else, like just living a good life, then I don't know, I guess the rigidity doesn't make sense anymore. Like it just doesn't make sense anymore, right?
Can we talk about the fear of that? Because this is where, so I'm very solution focused with how I do treatment with individuals or intervention with individuals. And when I start to ask that question, right? Because that's a very solution focused question of like, who is future you?
Yeah.
What life do you like? What does your life look like? Who's around you? What are you doing with your free time? If you're no longer eating these foods, thinking about these foods, recovering from binging on these foods, what are you doing with your time? You ask somebody, are you living your best life? And you watch them go through 7 stages of purple. I've had people push back and they're like, I really hate when you ask me that question, Molly. It makes me really angry. There are some really big feelings that come from when you're saying, what if the goal is just to live a good life or our best life? And so many people are not asked that question of what do you want?
I know. Yeah.
Well, can you imagine, like, how do you imagine a life you've never had? Right. So my immediate response to your question, when you say like, what are you doing? I don't know is my answer because I've never had even a moment where I wasn't doing all those things you just said.
I know, but now we get to use our imagination and go, oh, oh, if I could design this, if I were a little kid again, like drawing pictures in school or whatever, or telling stories to my friends, even if it feels like quote fantasy,
Yeah.
there's actually nothing standing on our way. If we don't know, we can literally guess. And here's the thing, as soon as we start making actions or taking actions that move us in that direction, we'll know pretty quickly if that's actually the direction we want to be going, right? If it's like, oh, hey, I'm going to check out Claire's book and there's this tool, this food plan. And like you said, Claire, like, please don't buy this book if you want weight loss, because that's not what this book is about. But I guarantee there are going to be a number of people who buy this book because they want to experience weight loss, which is totally fair and fine, right? But they might go to the most restrictive one, right? The most structured food plan, because they're thinking that's the one. And pretty quickly, because like I said, I don't even have to look at it to know, like, yeah, that's probably not the one for me. As soon as somebody's telling me do, right? So again, like, I may not know who my future self is, but as soon as I start trying things on, even if it's just a thought experiment, I'm going to know pretty quickly if that's for me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. Knowing, and, a couple of thoughts come to mind. So one is, when I have been in addiction, and I've spent many more years of my life being in addiction than out of addiction, if we're going to rope in the food, which I would like to, because it feels like it has been a major addiction of mine. And when you're in it, all you want is to be out of it, right? Like, you just want to be done. Like, that's all you know. And like, I feel like I've spent a lot of years being in addiction, having no idea who I was and what I want. You know what I mean? And so I guess I would just, for that part of the question you're asking, is like to know that it's really exciting when you get out of the addiction to like be like, woohoo. And it's scary. Like, who the heck am I and what the heck do I want? Like, that's the joy of being in recovery, is you get to invent yourself again. But when you're in the addiction, it can feel really hard to know that is going to be like something, that it's going to be fun. But yeah, I mean, I think, like, I don't know, what was the question again?
No, I know. I got us lost because I'm like, no, we got to wait about it. You had been talking about when we make goals about something other than like food plans, weight loss, that kind of thing. If it's like a goal about living a good life or having a good life.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think the other thing about weight loss to say is that a lot of people, like, I've lost weight in food addiction recovery for sure. And a lot of people will lose weight in food addiction recovery. So, in that way, the book is a little bit of a weight loss book, but that is certainly not where I think people, like, I have not found peace. If I was to make weight loss my goal, I would still, which is insane because I'm actually a normal weight right now, like normal, healthy weight. Like, my crazy mind would want to be like 15 pounds thinner because that's what the supermodels look like. And like, that's not helpful. So I need to be reminded that that's also, not where happiness lies. Like, happiness lies at my current weight, you know what I mean? And peace. And also, if I was to be 15 pounds lighter, I would be filled with cravings and insane behavior around food, right? So like, finding that the goal that's going to be, I don't know, like the peaceful one. Or whatever it is you want, you know what I mean? Whatever it is you're looking for, that's not about the weight stuff, which just doesn't take places.
I feel like it can be like, I was just having this conversation with a client today, that they can have the values of recovery, right? Is like health and like freedom with food and, being able to travel and not worry about it. And they can still have, like, I don't want us to not say they can't have a goal of living in a body that, is maybe smaller than they're already in, and to release weight, especially if, things that they're doing to work towards that are actually benefiting their recovery, right? So if I'm somebody who, one of my goals maybe is weight loss, is now I'm also going to start like wearing a weighted vest so that I can walk a little bit more, which is good for my bones and all of this. And I'm doing it in a very adaptive way. That can be really positive. And I'm eating foods that are really nourishing. That can be really positive, right? It's when we start to notice it becomes maladaptive. Now I'm wearing the weighted vest for 8 hours a day, blah, blah, blah. That's actually taking me away from the peace and freedom, which is my value in recovery. And I think that's where it gets so complicated and nuanced, because we can't have one without the other. I have not worked with I've worked with clients who are probably more on the eating disorder spectrum, in terms of like being underweight or undernourished, that their goal actually isn't weight loss. But anyone that is, in a larger body, that's the main goal when they first come see me. And they start to shift to their values of recovery over time. So I think it's important to highlight we can have a goal, we can have a value that are different, and there's no harm in any of it. It's like finding that happy, messy middle where you start to notice that the drive and the desire of weight loss is like less noise.
Totally. Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, I think the other thing that came to mind as you were talking is the idea of like the spiraling up phenomena. Like, I feel like when people get into recovery, like we make one small change and it just is the thing. Like, so you cut out the, I don't know, sugar or something. That's huge. That's not a small change, but it's it's very effective for many people. But say you cut out a certain food that's a problem food, and what that does is it starts to like build up your stress resilience, brain chemistry. It starts to improve your impulse control. The cue of that particular food becomes less and less powerful. You maybe lose a little bit of weight, you start to feel more like exercising. You exercise more, that resets your dopamine circuitry and also improves your impulse control and improves your stress resilience. And then you feel a little more confident. So you maybe go to your first meeting, or, finally reach out to a therapist because you're not quite so ashamed of yourself. And then that like feeds in, and then you feel like making the next step, which is to cut out this other, food or whatever it is. Like there's just this, it just feeds on itself. And so doing one small thing is, going to lead into the next. And I guess the other thing I would say is it's so weird. It does work. I mean, it may feel like I know what that hopelessness feels like. Like you hear these people say, like, for example, I went to OA off and on, and it never quite caught for me, but you would hear these, it definitely could catch for some of you. So don't it's worth checking out. But I would hear these stories of people that were like, oh, like, fixed and better, and I was like, I hate you, like it's never going to happen for me, and I'm hate to say it, but I kind of feel like one of those people now. Like I feel pretty good. You know what I mean? Like I just feel fine. Like I feel fine. Like I don't have a lot of issues right now. And how weird is that, right? So it does happen that where we get released from this problem. So you can spiral up. Like we can all spiral up.
Definitely. So as you're talking about that, I think the thing that stands out to me though, like as both you and Clarissa are sharing, Claire, is that neither one of you are talking about like weight loss becomes the obsession. Like we're not replacing the substance use disorder with now this behavioral thing where now it's like all about how much can I exercise and how little food can I get away with eating today? And is that number on the scale going to change by 2 pounds overnight, and on and on and on and on, because now we're just exchanging one for the other. And I think that's where I get really protective of people. And I think Clarissa's experience maybe of me or other people's experience of me might be like fear around this idea or goal of weight loss. And it's not that I fear it. I think my concern, or I have a very healthy respect for, I'm not about to create a container and then support or co-sign somebody's baloney that we're going to put down one for the other. I am a harm reduction clinician, but I see that as just like one harm for another, right? And so as I'm thinking about that, I'm really curious to know what messaging people might find in your book about, when they feel caught between that diet culture stuff of, like you had even used the word pure or whatever when we were talking about foods. And like, I cringe because like, I'm like, okay, there are words like pure and clean and all these things. And
no, it's terrible.
It's so gross. It's purity culture just repackaged as diet culture. And diet culture is just another way of like keeping us stuck and small. And that's just me in my social justice, like rebel self, like I was saying. But what is the messaging? What messaging might somebody find if they find themselves feeling stuck between like, oh, I'm being told that I need to have a smaller body, and I believe I need to have a smaller body for whatever reason. And how do I recover from addiction? Because addiction is addiction, right? The same brain structures are the ones that are being changed by the substances. It doesn't matter what the substance, I mean, it matters in some aspects, but like as we're talking in big, broad brushstrokes right now. So what do we tell, or what messaging is in there for those people who are stuck between diet culture and I need to recover from this disorder that's killing me, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, I think diet culture is unhelpful, I think is primarily the message I would say. And as you know, as David Wiss says, and I quote him in the book, it's not about the weight. Like that is so toxic that we have this idea that it's about the weight. Like, what is that? And I still get like crazy about that. I mean, I still get sucked into that kind of thinking. I still weigh myself every once in a while and think, oh my God, like the number is not what it was a month ago. So, I still have those thoughts, and the book has messaging that, gives you some tools too about how to let that thinking go in a compassionate, gentle way. Like, this is not something we can change overnight. We are inundated with these words like pure and clean. And, there is this very kind of, in the food addiction treatment world too, more, I don't know, I hate to use the word rigid because I think some people actually do feel better when they're on a more restrictive food plan, right?
Well, there's spectrums of the structure, right? So some people need like a more firm structure. Some people can have a little more flexible structure, and some people are somewhere in between.
Totally. So I think that's the messaging in this book is that, like, I don't know what's best for you. I'm going to give you the information, like what we know, and then I'm going to throw out some ideas. But really, this is going to be, your journey. And like we were talking about a little bit earlier, like trusting yourself. I mean, when I'm in active addiction, I don't know, all the messages are so confusing. Like, I don't really know what myself is. Like, it's just really hard to know. But like, there is a wise voice in there. Like, get the people around you to help you figure out what yourself is, which is also really hard because, like, I can think of, the therapists I've had have all been trained in eating disorders treatment models. And so when I say things like I'm cutting out sugar, I can see all these facial responses like, oh, I want to support you in your goal. But like, they're like, oh, that's a terrible idea, right? Like that to them sounds like too restrictive because our culture doesn't say that that's allowable, that we should just be able to eat our cookies in moderation.
But it also isn't taking your lived experience into account. And that to me is, I would immediately have to walk away from that therapist because they're not believing your real lived experience.
The problem is I'm the vulnerable person and the therapist is supposed to know more than me. And so therefore, like, then I can't trust myself because the therapist is telling me I shouldn't.
And when you're in an active addiction, you're even more vulnerable because you're just like, your brain is like so like all over the place, right? Like one minute you're like, cookie, the next minute you're like, I hate myself. You know what I mean? It's just like so confusing. Like you can't trust, it feels like you can't trust yourself. So yeah, it's the book like will give you guidance out of it. And there is a way out, right? Like all three of us have found ways out, and all three of us have met many, 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 many people and helped many, many people that have found ways out. So there's a way out, and there's a way out that's best for you. And so, yeah.
No, I love that so much. I also thought when you were talking about spiraling up, and I just thought of so many of the clients that I've worked with and how positively reinforcing all of that spiraling up is, and that they sometimes still have these slips, right? Or these reoccurrences, and how they learn with these, actually, this isn't so great anymore. And I love my big, beautiful life now, and how that spiraling up, and like the more time we spend in this recovery, how it becomes so much more attractive to go back to. And I think sometimes in our field, these, one bite, one binge, the 60-pound cheese curd or whatever curl, things that we hear is create so much fear around us, like potentially eating something off plan. And I really think that what I love about the book is it normalizes slips and reoccurrences, and there's compassion around it. And yeah, I just wondered if you could speak to that a bit as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like actually, when you were talking, I was thinking of how even in the addiction field, like opioid use disorder, say, for example, right? Like there's still this idea that, patient has, just an imaginary patient has 15, residential treatments, right? Like they've gone through treatment 15 times and they've had, 6 months here and 3 months there and 1 week there. And like, it keeps failing it keeps failing the treatment is sort of the message that the world is giving them, right? Or you keep failing the treatment. When in fact, no, like they've had 6 months of sobriety. They got to live 6 months like not using opioids and experiencing all these beautiful things that life can, and it's hard in the first 6 months. It's especially hard in the first 6 months. There's a lot of cravings and struggle and mood stuff. But they also had some learning about how life can be without substances. And so for me, like any time in recovery is time well spent. And, even if it's 30 seconds, right? Like,
I mean, but we need to talk about, and Claire, please do speak more to this, that, I think that there is a fear message that like, if we return to use, if there's recurrence, if there's, relapse or whatever, that now we've just messed it all up. It's either all or nothing, but talk about not just like the emotional and social benefits of that, but there's actual cognitive, there's brain benefits to going without these substances for extended periods of time, even though somebody might be listening to this and going, well, I've only ever strung together 10 days, or I've only ever gotten 3 months. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, can we leave people with a little bit of hope today? I mean, not that we're not hopeful today. I'm just saying, I know we're coming to an end and I want to be respectful of your time. And I really was hoping we could kind of leave on this note of like, there is benefit to this, even if it is just 30 seconds or 3 minutes or 3 days.
I mean, yeah, depending on the length of time, like recovery will, and back to the book again, there are these 3 sort of pillars of addiction. One is conditioning, one is stress reactivity, and then one is impulse decision-making or impulse control. And all of these kind of 3 pillars are adversely affected as a result of overusing substances. But when there's some time free, all 3 of the circuits start to rewire themselves back to health. It's just the absence of that substance damaging the brain leads to recovery. So for example, 6 months, people's brains start to, their dopamine levels rebalance, their, the loss of brain volume reverses. So people's brains start to grow back. And, in terms of tolerance and withdrawal, that's a big driver of overuse. People, use because it makes them feel better, which just makes their emotional situation worse. And then without substances on board, the emotional centers kind of restabilize and people are able to, just not have as many dips and ups and downs as before. So any time at all is great for the brain. And it's only going to, teach you more.
Reinforce recovery, right?
Well said.
It's a team effort here, always.
It's my favorite kind of conversation.
Always happy to have words like stated for me. My partner gets really mad. I'll like finish his sentences and he's just like,
yeah, I love it when Molly finishes mine. It's
I love it too. Thank you.
It's like she's got me. Great.
Yeah.
So can you let the audience know, when does the book come out? What is the title? Is there a website? Where should I get it? All of the juicy information. We're so excited.
Yeah, sure. So it's coming out August 1st and the free online material will be available as well on August 1st, as well an audiobook. So it's on like anywhere, Barnes and Noble, New Harbinger Publications is the name of the publication company. It's on Amazon. It's on everywhere. So the title of the book is Rewire Your Food-Addicted Brain. It's actually very long, so I have trouble remembering it. Rewire Your Food-Addicted Brain, Fight Cravings and Break Free from a High Sugar Ultra Processed Diet. And I'm just like thrilled that it's going to be coming out. I'm really, really excited. And my website is www.wilcoxmd.com. So it's pretty easy to remember, Wilcox MD. And if people want to go there, like I have links to the book there. And I also have links to the textbook that kind of preceded this that I wrote that got published in 2021. And there's, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and all that stuff. So
What I love about the book is it's so practical. It's like, step by step, but you can like figure out your way with the steps. And there's so many tools. I think it's, sometimes we like this information, but we like can overthink things. And I think this book's like just, makes this information so accessible and practical. And that's what I love about it. So I'm excited for it to come out and become a #1 bestseller. So I hope you're ready for that, Dr. Wilcox.
No. Yeah. And the other thing too, I want to add is, so again, the AAA is like the big thing. Thank you guys for all the help and support and tools and, concrete information, and Claire, for all your writing support and everything. But B, one of my favorite things about the tools is that as a kind of neuroscience nerd, I had to cite like articles that showed how the tools work. So there's all this like reference in the tools material, like, this is exercise. It doesn't just work. Like, this is why it's working. And this is like where it's acting in your brain. And this is a study that's like showing exercise is one of my favorite things, tools, basic tools. So, and it does affect the brain in a lot of positive ways. So that's just one example of many.
Just started firing. I was like, oh, I better go back to that part. I have it already. I
was just going to say, you are like firing everybody up who's going to listen to this. And by the time this airs, they probably, it's going to be very quickly before they can go online. We'll have all the links and you can have access to those tools and buy the book and listen to the podcast. And we will make sure any of you listening can reach out to Claire or contact her if you want to.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Claire.
Thanks, you guys. It was great to be here.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group. I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.